I think Diana, well, I know, we all know, Diana would be shocked that we're sitting here today discussing her son as an outright liar, as a man who conspired with Meghan.
See them filming and including in the Netflix series a private text message. Okay, they don't reveal the contents, but clearly a negative text message that William's...
Absolutely. What we're really now seeing is that both of them, having posed as the victim for so long, are really the aggressors.
Exposed. Tom Bauer says Meghan and Harry's story is collapsing. Over the last few years, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have...
And what I really thought at the end of it as well was this, which I think is a very, very pertinent point. When they came across for the Queen's funeral, and there was that amazing scene outside the castle of meeting the well-wishers in the walk, there was always talk of reconciliation. Mm-hmm. Charles and William and Kate go one side, Harry and Meghan the other side, smiling and all the rest of it. But at that time, William didn't know that Harry and Meghan had already recorded their poison for Netflix. It was already edited. All the stuff that we heard today about Charles lying, about William screaming and shouting, was in the can, was being edited, and they duplicitly did not reveal what they were going to do. Now, Harry's got form on that, because he did exactly the same at Prince Philip's funeral, when he recorded that whole thing about how his father was responsible for his mental breakdown.
Let's take a closer look at what's being said and what it could mean for...
And he stood in the St. George's Chapel, knowing that he'd done his family down in the Apple broadcast, the armchair broadcast, and didn't reveal it. So he's as duplicitous as Meghan, but it's worse, because she's an actress. She's got no stake in this country. But Harry, a former army officer, betraying the army, his country, his family, his father, dumping on the king, the future king too, and also on his grandmother, that is extraordinary. I mean, Diana would be shocked. The one thing Diana didn't do was be so duplicitous, so dishonest.
Well, no, and Diana made it clear, didn't she? Her criticism was always reserved for Charles.
Absolutely.
Not for the Queen, not for the institution of monarchy itself.
But Harry has actually gone out of his way to undermine everything that we stand for. He's gone out of his way to undermine the family, the institution, everything. And I think Diana, well, I know, we all know, Diana would be shocked that we're sitting here today discussing her son as an outright liar, as a man who conspired with Meghan in their 6 hours of perfidy. You know, for example, the whole description she does of the Portland hospital, the birth, that was completely fabricated. We all know the first interview was given to CBS. We all know that she never intended to go to the Portland hospital. She intended to have the baby at home. We know that they deceived the public about the birth data and time of the whole event. So, and also, you know, even it goes down to the lawyer saying that in that statement, when they have that long attack on the Mail, which is astonishing, that Meghan, we know she lied in her statement, that she says that she didn't cooperate with Omid Scobie, and she said that she didn't consult anyone when writing the letter to her father. That was in a sworn written statement. That was untrue. She then admits that it was untrue. But her lawyer says Meghan didn't lie. Well, extraordinary how the whole thing is unraveling.
And yet they don't produce any evidence.
None at all.
Of the claims that they have made against the royal family. For example, William being a bully. For example, this idea that the royal family was conspiring with the press to bring them down. Where is the evidence?
It's always they. They never named them, except they did name Jason Knauf, the man who in the end exposed Meghan's lies, and of course they're furious with him. So the whole series ends with that statement on the screen which says Knauf is the liar, not us. And that is the level they've sunk to. But I also think, you know, Netflix have a lot to answer for. If an established broadcaster in Britain or America produced that sort of succession, 6 hours of lies, they would be absolutely hounded out.
No balance.
Not only no balance, no truth,
whatsoever.
no criteria. I mean, what is the criteria? It is just propaganda. You know, Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's propagandist, would look with real awe at what the Sussexes and Netflix have achieved.
Because what they've done quite cleverly, right, especially for an international audience, because I know this is landing well, shockingly, outside of the UK. What they've done very cleverly is they use their friends, their lawyer, academics who have always backed their side of the argument to seem to give a balanced picture. It's as if you are watching a balanced documentary, but in fact, all of those people are stooges. They are plants for Harry and Meghan. I mean, this friend, Lucy Fraser, I think her name is, she's some sort of PR. She's stating as categorical fact, right, that there were internals, as she calls them, at the palace who had decided that Harry and Meghan had become too popular, so they had to bring them down. Who has told Lucy that? Harry and Meghan. She hasn't spoken to anyone at the palace.
But you know, what's really extraordinary as well is that normally in making documentaries, which I did for more than 20 years at the BBC, you film someone, that's it. This is all acted, it's contrived. Doria always has that little pause, a little tear. Have you noticed how Meghan cries, but there's never a tear? The makeup is never smeared.
Wait, guys, have you noticed this too? I thought I was going crazy, but Bauer's absolutely right. Meghan's crying scenes are perfectly choreographed. No smeared makeup, no actual tears, just perfect emotional performance. It's like watching a soap opera. And there it is. She literally admitted she can cry on command. So when we see her crying in the documentary, is that genuine emotion or just another performance? The evidence suggests it's all an act, my friends.
Everything is so rehearsed.
We found that clip of her, didn't she, saying that one of her great talents is that she can cry on cue out of her left eye.
And you know the whole construction of her father, that man who in the end was abandoned by Meghan for months before the wedding, totally left to his own devices, isolated, really felt abandoned. That's why he sold the photographs, because he felt so besmirched. To actually say he was the reason why the whole thing exploded, why they had to leave in Britain. And then, of course, Harry saying, of course, Meghan's got no father.
Then there are the broader allegations, the unnamed royal racist that she mentioned. Critics like Bauer argue that the lack of specific detail makes it impossible to verify or refute anything. In his words, it's extraordinary how their own words are beginning to conflict with reality. But let's talk about something we can verify. The Thomas Markle situation. This is absolutely heartbreaking, guys. They abandoned this man, drove him to desperation, and then blamed him for their problems. The cruelty is staggering.
It's despicable, and I know you've obviously done this, as have I. You know, you go and you speak to the Markles, you get to understand them, but actually you can look at Meghan's own public statements. I mean, she stood up at the United Nations. That was her most famous appearance before meeting Harry, and she praised Thomas Markle. She said he was a great father who instilled the values in her that allowed her to challenge that soap company, which she talks about all the time. She credited that to, well, of course
Absolutely.
it was. But the point is, she credited her father, and now she's sort of trying to say, oh yeah, he was a good dad, but I actually felt really lonely as a kid.
But I think what is also so terrible is that Harry never went to see the father.
Oh.
And why not? Because Meghan was ashamed of him.
So she publicly praised her father at the United Nations, crediting him with her values and strength, but then completely erased him from her narrative once it became convenient. The level of betrayal is absolutely shocking.
Because Meghan was already constructing a whole new narrative to exclude the father. And in that, the father, Thomas Markle, blames Doria. Yeah. And Doria plays a really sinister role in this whole story. Because remember, for 10 years in Meghan's life, from the age of 5 to 18, more than 10 years, she disappeared.
But we never hear about that.
We never hear. And she says at one stage, I went to every one of Meghan's plays at school. Of course she didn't. She was never there.
No, and also, Thomas Markle paid for the university fees.
And the school fees, and the car, and the home, and the blackout, he paid for everything, the petrol, everything.
Hold up, guys. Doria disappeared for over 10 years of Meghan's childhood, but now she's portrayed as this devoted mother? Meanwhile, Thomas, who was actually there and paid for everything, gets completely erased? The rewriting of history is absolutely brazen. So the man who sacrificed everything for his daughter, who paid for her education, her car, her home, gets thrown under the bus while the mother who was absent for a decade gets elevated to saint status. The injustice is absolutely infuriating, my friends. Guys, if Bauer is right, we haven't seen anything yet. They deliberately held back content from Netflix to save it for the book. that means the worst attacks are still coming. The strategic nature of this destruction is absolutely calculated and chilling.
So Tom, look, can we look ahead? Because of course this isn't the end. You know, it's only a couple of weeks until we're likely to get the first leak of Spare, the Harry autobiography. Now, I hear lots of people, I disagree with them, but I hear lots of people saying, oh, what more damage can he do? But I think you think this book could be even worse.
Well, I think what they've had to do is they've had to stage and restrict what's in Netflix so they've got something new to sell the book because there's £20 million at least. Well, I think there's definitely got to be something about Camilla. She's escaped so far. I think there's
we know they don't like her.
We know we don't like her, and there's the whole race thing there. I think there's more about King Charles, the relationship with his father, the relationship between father and mother. I think there's a lot more about the whole institutions of British government. And I think something of the Queen as well. I mean, what he said about the Queen today was shocking, that she sat there likes of in the Sandringham Summit not saying anything. But what was terrible, he said about the Queen, and he'd done about the Queen, is that he knew that he dumped on his grandmother when he was burying her in Windsor. And that is the level of their duplicity. That is unforgivable of Harry to have done that.
I think it's completely unforgivable, and actually he's trying to undo the Queen's life.
My friends, this is the most damning revelation of all. Harry stood at his grandmother's funeral, knowing he had already recorded content attacking her. He looked his family in the eye while secretly planning their destruction. That's not just duplicitous, that's evil. The Queen spent her entire life building and protecting the Commonwealth, and Harry is systematically trying to destroy it all. The betrayal of his grandmother's legacy is absolutely unforgivable. Now guys, supporters of Harry and Meghan argue that trauma isn't always linear, and when you're telling your truth, some inconsistencies are completely natural. They say the couple have been mistreated, misunderstood, and maligned, especially by the press. But Bauer takes a much harder view.
Any evidence?
None at all.
Of the claims that they have made against the royal family. For example, William being a bully. For example, this idea that the royal family was conspiring with the press to bring them down. Where is the evidence?
It's always they. They never name them, except they did name Jason Knauf, the man who in the end exposed Meghan's lies. And of course, they're furious with him. So the whole series ends with that statement on the screen which says Knauf is the liar, not us. And that is the level they've sunk to. But I also think, Netflix have a lot to answer for.
Starting to ask the hard questions. Why do they keep endlessly revisiting the same drama? Why are there always more revelations, more attacks, more victimhood?
But Harry, a former army officer, betraying the army, his country, his family, his father, dumping on the king, the future king too, and also on his grandmother. That is extraordinary. I mean, Diana would be shocked. The one thing Diana didn't do was be so duplicitous, so dishonest.
Why are there always more interviews, more documentaries, more memoirs? And more importantly, are they telling the full story or just the version that sells best? Bauer believes the unraveling of their narrative isn't just a media phenomenon. It's a fundamental shift in public perception that's been blowers exposing institutional corruption.
Well, no, and Diana made it clear, didn't she? Her criticism was always reserved for Charles.
Absolutely.
Not for the Queen, not for the institution of monarchy itself.
But Harry has actually gone out of his way to undermine everything that we stand for. He's gone out of his way to undermine the family, the institution, everything.
The unraveling of a carefully constructed narrative doesn't happen overnight, my friends. But when it starts, it's incredibly hard to stop. And once the benefit of the doubt is completely gone, so is the power of the story. Once people start questioning everything, the entire house of cards can collapse spectacularly. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Are Harry and Meghan being unfairly picked apart by critics like Tom Bauer? Or is he absolutely right, and we're finally seeing the truth behind the carefully constructed curtain? The evidence is mounting, and it's getting harder to ignore. Thanks for watching, and as always, peace out, Seshers!